Hello, New Yorkers are affected by criminally foreign influence slash hypercriminally foreign influence campuses. I am not a lawyer. There are recorded means to observe how lawyers on all sides of criminal and civil cases and interbranch and intelligence tied to them, and news, and names that next to all natures of crime scenes had and have collusion slash S with a method slash S that is manifest relative to use slash S of it that are also collusions form manifest in the form of collusions because the breaching method keeps how nature demonstrates to humanity. For example, a human fact human nature breaching method is one of the things all those different crazy laws against the human differences multi-front were about at the same time. Witch trials next to the Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. Then and now, other communicated about that place and about our founders and about the rest that our founders communicated to have communicated with themselves about that and about how and why James Madison is the only founder that they had the security to let us even know the name of. And it was his plan that they were using. In other words, all truths they had to use for lies, why their motivations were to be a unity. They were forced to break the laws that were going to hurt them just with the investigations of it. And or the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, the terrorists only capable of being manifest at the time. For example, pirates, as they were described to us. But not just pirates, there were also obviously other ways, just humanity that we knew the rest of the systems were corrupt. See, everyone is using systems leaving out the breaching methods roles with this. That's what's hyper corrupt. And everyone leaves that out the way the breaching method knew everyone would and maintains that outcome. Because the campuses A through Z at locations, areas, and states A through Z. Everywhere the human species body has a body standing. They have criminally foreign influence quality aspects in nature. See, the nature of debate, they want and need to have people with, oh, you're either communist or capitalist. Capitalism has never been free. And all impositions that have been leveraged by a breaching method, sickly, non-distinctly. They're also sickly, distinctly against everybody, no matter who they are. They use that effectively. Everyone's self-value roles, leaving out and replacing, for example, the breaching method's roles with having replaced the communications that would have been and could have been and would be and could be regarding why and how we have black pupils, whites of eyes, excuse me. These are revelations. They come with right where and how nature uses, showing us our means to discern its body of value progression to an extent. Where and how we could discern that it is generating totally different individual species bodies of a whole bunch of individual bodies. And we have different quality aspects in nature, but they're also the same. They're distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous, but also per that further distinct identity of simultaneous nature. Hyper invisible, but still discernible such way. Slash S. We have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. We are a different individual species body of a whole bunch of individual bodies at the same time. We have nature communicating to us about difference. The difference between, but nature and what our founders communicated about difference. We weren't supposed to have a nature debate regarding. So you guys have the names of the people, the sciences have their knowledge of good and evil, like I forgot his name again, a colonel who said, don't shoot until you see the whites of eyes. We weren't supposed to appreciate that and have a nature debate about that, leaving out James Madison's roles with that. So you guys can't have natures of principles treatments. The nature debate slash S is being and having been self-valued, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. So they use things like a breaching method measures counters to it because overtly the people using and trying to counter things like racism, there are collusions with the people countering that as an array. Also, the sense and sensibility sensing for the hyperforeign breaching method. Anyone with short words with convictions proper regarding this. Otherwise, it would have brought up how we have black pupils, whites of eyes in a breaching method. Our founders declassified for us to appreciate this, their communications, how it is distinct from what they said, because everyone what they said was measured and maintained by overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, internationally monitored conversations and questions forced to measure and maintain everyone in an extent of collusion slash S against themselves and against others and pretending other. Otherwise, that body would be sensed. And then that made and maintained real reasons for people to blame. Like, even like when they blame, when they say, oh, they real blame, but exactly wrong, blaming with the blame about and leaving out the breaching method exactly the way it needed, because then all the records is them blaming wrong. And then all sides in an array. And that pretended debatable. When a breaching method, in other words, reassigned with both our founders, again, as James Madison, they had to have declassified for themselves. It is recorded how and why they did not have free speech during their lifetimes. Again, because the breaching method that was entrenched. Northern colonies and southern colonies, more than 13. No one had the security to fight for unity. James Madison had to force them to. Everyone's using their differences, other people's differences, to jump in. Oh, you're saying things bad about police. They had conversations with me as a kid, now as an adult, as ones involved with World Trade Center predicate acts with the other countries. They already demonstrated to me how they have roles together with the other countries, with private criminal enterprises, overt criminal enterprises, with differences, rackets. They can't defend their own uses of differences and ours at the same time. Increasingly, there's an O'Brien family and there's a Kolvenskis family who have the flag involved with them, with proven child abusers, leaders of kids years apart, and involved also with religious spots and names on all sides of them, involved with untimely deaths years apart, murders, Facebook, forensics, the agencies in the courts changing and faking digital evidences. They never stopped having collusions with all natures of crime scenes. See, these parties, they help the identities of law. They make value by the parties and the value of voting, where it never was value, the way they had it trained to them to be. Otherwise, they had their roles, needs, nature, sensing for the breaching method. But they're also just putting fake conversations and transcripts and ties and natures of ties between people into databases. That's why and how they're part of why and how they're switching names and forging names and incapable of getting onto paper legitimately now into branch. It's not because we're going to be so many suits against us, not just because of that. It's also further layered on the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices in Wethersfield, Connecticut, intercities with names next to the campuses. They've been putting predicate acts with facts method /S roles, collusion /S. Per way worse. Forgiveness is to not leave out the way worse. Not like, for example, there are collusions that the identities of law, the interbranch intelligence have that we could observe just with black people's whites of eyes and simultaneous appreciation of what James Madison declassified for us and simultaneous appreciation of how that appreciation was as replaced and other was as pretended. Dishonestly, but using truths for lies, facts, fact-cheating nature, fake motivations about respect, etc. Individually grouped and together, the branches of government, their voices, their voicings have been incapable, their styles, needs, and nature incapable of defending that and of affording to be, let alone to protract short words with convictions proper for the humanity. Nature has long, is more probable, demonstrable, hyper evidential. The ancients appreciate the body generating totally different species bodies of a whole bunch of individual bodies, being the same one that generates them with quality aspects in nature distinct, but also non-distinct, like two eyes. And again, it's showing us about its body of difference, a distinct identity of difference, a distinct identity of simultaneous nature that is juxtaposed with all other identities of volume, even if they're made up. Its hypervolume science is inseparable from, distinctly from, the order of the finite, or the smallest finite detail, the order of what is active or grouped, the order of what is simultaneous, because it is increasingly a distinct identity of simultaneous nature, a hyper-simultaneous, therefore. The same body of value / variable progression I refer to as a hyper-invisible but still discernible. It is a hyper-invisible / invisible but still discernible conjunction to all parts of speech of every language, and of English was revealed to teach this way, as a grouped language, grouped when before the sciences became criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions wrought, hyper additional collusions only allowed, and but self-valued and or role sensing for the breaching method. Nature and campuses appreciated. Fact, human nature, quality aspects in nature, and directions directed by nature's identity of complete identity of relationship to itself, as value here only increasing, or as it forced from here, as forced space nature transfer, as Leith of Hades had more probably been defined by the ancients of pantheism, more probably having been about how nature shows us it is functional, being hyper invisible but still discernible, distinctly from how it is invisible but still discernible. Again, as the parts of speech of English grammar, about the invisible but still discernible, but also about the invisible but still discernible / hyper invisible but still discernible. For example, this is what we are appreciating it, the same body of value progression, to an extent discernible, as what we are appreciating, regardless if it's used in a sentence or not, where and how they are manifest. More the needs for more than one name for a verb. We are being shown the body of the same body of forever nature. It shows us too where we can discern its individual identity of value / variable progression to an extent. Again, for example, as that which is generating totally different species bodies and the way and quality aspects in nature with that. It is showing us its body to an extent, variably, but it comes with its complete identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that. And it shows us this way and other way / s, how it is functional, being hyper invisible but still discernible, distinctly from how it is invisible but still discernible. For example, Native Americans can discern. See, but Native Americans, their discernment required defenses of American education and of principal treatments by James Madison's plan. And why and how he's the only name that had the security to let us know about. And they declassified, and nature itself demonstrates to us no one had free speech, and everyone was forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to pretend to others simultaneously. And the differences of the guilt with that is also used to measure and maintain the breaching method left out. So people will say and do whatever at locations and online to hide what's actually recorded. We had and have means to discern a breaching method's uses of counters to people and acts or nature of racism. They self-value the counters and the people with it as collusions with sequence shifts and with cover-ups of which actually recorded the value of media voices. CBS attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others as their roles, for example, also with Fox News people and WTNH people and the intelligence next to those locations. And next to WTNH is the FBI. They are increasingly involved intercities and intra-cities, intercampuses and intra-campuses with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists at the same time. And news, and body dumping spots, untimely deaths. All this stuff was recorded. All kinds of things are recorded on Facebook. Not the way you guys pretend and think, which is the real ways. And but we solved the real crime. Even when they do that, they're using that as collusion /S with the other names involved, including all the countries in the news. They have private criminal enterprises that manifest here and there. The differences of their guilt that's also used by the breaching method that consciously made names A through Z. That made defended uses of them as the country's names that could only be operated by the voicings in the voices at locations, areas, and states, everywhere the species body is. It made them use that to blame other things, others, ourselves, to counter what it did and maintains. They're still doing this. And then they defend that, and the people counter that syntactically, therefore physically, more and more correctly, but correctly, exactly, wrongly, exactly the way the breaching method wants and needs. That's why we have to pay attention to how it is observable, where and how truths are used for lies. The nature of debate itself is used to get over on people. The difference between the political parties, the difference between communism and capitalism. They are used by the breaching method to measure and maintain. Not one voice speaks for even where and how. There are such concentrated, overt examples of a human fact-achieving nature breaching method being and having been involved with the worst causes of the worst natures of crimes and of criminals at all locations, areas, and states. I'm focusing on New York, though, because these are also World Trade Center attack roles. And the differences of their guilt, the ones involved, or the conjunctions to them, like their neighbors. There are neighbors of World Trade Center attack victim families that had collusion /S with mass faked evidences, transcripts. Harper courts and the Britain Superior Court, the district court, involved with all kinds of natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders, all sides of criminal and civil cases, collusions with them with the crime scenes. Increasingly a hyper foreign crime scene. That's one of the things that is actually recorded when you guys bring up racism or counters to it, leaving up the breaching method's roles here. That's one of the things that's racist, because the breaching method forced the laws to be racist. And you guys forced, and everyone was forced by the laws to blame other things, others, ourselves for that. The founders behind with the might behind and power behind James Madison and his plan, they left us to explain for that for themselves. They wanted nothing to do with the slavery that was in roles and other at the same time. The difference of the guilt with that or that too, that was used too by the breaching method. It uses counters to everything that it caused as collusion /S since ancient times, since before religious messengers were born. We pay attention, this is most probable and way more practical to theorize, let alone to convict, than what has been standing with convictions. So I could show to President Trump clearer than day. People have been using the flag as fake. Fake, in other words, a O'Brien family and a Klovinskis family and a Mark Violet, they're increasingly with people all along Route 175 from the founding and locations in Old Weathersfield, involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, sequence shifts, acting tied to people who put predicate acts and facts in databases, little tricks to make it look like there was something before. They describe interactions between kids in ways to make it look like they communicated before that, to hide what's actually recorded there. Increasingly, Wethersfield mayors and a former mayor Gold have rules with people with organized crimes with the campuses and with parks and the side entrances to parks. They have all kinds of federal evidence crimes with the FBI and courts, and sexual and medical offenders of kids, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, people involved with the Parks and Rec, the town offices next to it, the Wethersfield Community Center, families on all sides of it. Mass identity theft, fraud, things, mass group think force too. They attach everyone to fake transcripts too that way. In other words, these are the only dishonest and or criminally incapable and tactically delusions wrought defenses of the names of the people of sciences A through Z. Therefore, the identity is the law too, because they have staged collusion /S. Please get them on paper. Get me off the fake conversations with them into branch. Get them on paper, one name in sequence. Watch how sick everyone has stayed at countries A through Z. Here, Anthony.